Okay. So hi everyone. I'll begin the session. There was a request for this particular session regarding how to write a research proposal. And so the whole idea of doing this presentation is that a lot of you might be considering applying for PhD programs, you might be considering, you might already be enrolled in PhD programs and looking forward to, preparing your research synopsis. So the whole purpose of this particular session is to kind of help you think around these issues. So let me share my screen. And Mahima, I'll just make you the host again.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So let me just share a. Great. So yeah, the focus that this particular session has is on how to work on a research proposal. So let me begin by saying this, that a lot of what I'll be sharing today comes from my own experience as a researcher. I'm sure this is not the only way to work on a research proposal. There might be many ways to work at it. And this is just one of the many. Okay. So it's not like, this is the standardized process. Depending on which discipline you're wanting to pursue your research in, आप साइंसेस में कर रहे हैं या सोशल साइंसेस में कर रहे हैं, आप किस मेथोडोलॉजिकल अप्रोच को यूज करेंगे, आपका क्वांटिटेटिव मेथड्स पे बेस्ड रिसर्च है या क्वालिटेटिव मेथड्स पे बेस्ड रिसर्च है, ये भी एक इम्पोर्टेंट पार्ट प्ले करते हैं in define in some way shaping how your research proposal would be. But of course there are also certain commons, right? So at the outset, what I want to make very clear is that this particular presentation that I've tried to put together is focused largely on social science researchers based on qualitative methodologies. Will be certain things which are common for any research proposal for social sciences. So beginning with developing a research proposal, there are certain things that may be useful to clear at this stage. One is a distinction between a thesis versus a dissertation. Some of you who've joined here, from what I can see, some of you are still master's students or who've just finished their master's. Some of you are enrolled in research programs, PhD programs. So if you've done a master's course in many subjects and many disciplines, you would have already undertaken a dissertation component. Now, some may wonder what is the difference between a thesis and a dissertation. So just want to get a sense. Anybody here, is clear about what's the difference between the two? Any idea as to what makes a thesis different from, say, a dissertation? Or are these synonyms? Are these interchangeable terms?
We use this term as interchangeable term. Like for us, thesis is equal to dissertation.
Right. So, largely there is a lot of commonality between these terms. But एक जो छोटा difference, slight difference है, usually dissertation term हम use करते हैं अंडरग्रेजुएट लेवल या MA लेवल डेजिटेशंस के लिए, जहां पे डेजिटेशन आपके कोर्स का एक कंपोनेंट है, right? So if you're a master's student, you may be doing a number of you'll have a number of courses, right? कोई core course होगा, elective course होगा, and dissertation is one component of that degree, right? Whereas thesis we largely refer to your researches in research programs जहाँ पे आपका जो research work है, that is the major part of your degree, right? So for a PhD research, for an MPhil research, जो आपका research work है, that is the core component of your program that you've enrolled in. Whereas dissertation is one of the several components, right? So that's one way to slightly differentiate between a thesis and a dissertation. तो जब आप डेजिटेशन करते हैं अंडर ग्रेजुएट या मास्टर्स प्रोग्राम में, वहां पे हमारे एक्सपेक्टेशंस थोड़े से अलग होते हैं, राइट? तो जब आप डेजिटेशन कर रहे हैं, क्योंकि आप अंडर ग्रेजुएट या मास्टर्स प्रोग्राम के लिए डेजिटेशन कर रहे हैं, तो वहां पे हमारे एक्सपेक्टेशंस डेजिटेशन से होते हैं कि आपको एक रिसर्च लिखने का जो प्रोसेस है, रिसर्च करने का प्रोसेस है, वो आपको समझ में आ जाए, राइट? सो द आइडिया ऑफ अ डेजिटेशन इज टू इनेबल स्टूडेंट्स develop a certain kind of familiarity with research process, with research methods, with writing a research report, and so on. So when you present your proposal, say for a dissertation, we will look at whether the structure is the way it should be, whether you've done a bit of literature review, whether you've been able to identify the methodology. For a dissertation, originality, contributing something new are not the major expectations, right? So it's great if you're able to contribute something to the existing the existing body of knowledge. अगर कुछ बहुत नया आइडिया है, it's great. लेकिन डेजिटेशन लेवल पे आप देखेंगे कि आप में से बहुत सारे लोग शायद कुछ ऐसा टॉपिक लेंगे जिसपे कुछ कुछ काम हुआ है, राइट? आपने उसका सेटिंग बदल दिया है, द नेचर ऑफ सैंपल में चेंज, there might be some methodological difference, but largely the key concern when you present your dissertation proposal is not that whether the idea is original. It's about whether you're being able to understand the process of research, the process of working on a research proposal. Whereas when you work on a thesis, that is for an MPhil or a PhD program, and largely a PhD program, a key concern definitely is about how original your work is going to be, right? So what is thesis से, एक PhD thesis से क्या एक्सपेक्टेशन रहता है, ये समझना बहुत जरूरी है एक अच्छे प्रपोजल को डेवलप करने के लिए, right? So what is expected of a PhD level research is the fact that you will be contributing to knowledge, right? There will be something. It doesn't have to be a new theory, or it doesn't have to be something that will shift the paradigm. लेकिन कुछ जो आपके रिसर्च से निकलेगा, राइट, वो किसी भी तरीके से नॉलेज को कंट्रीब्यूट करेगा, कुछ नए शायद रिलेशनशिप्स आइडेंटिफाई कर पाए, कुछ प्रोसेसेस जो फेमिलियर हैं या नहीं है, उनमें कुछ न्यूएंसेस पिकअप कर पाए. So there is something that you're contributing to the existing body of knowledge by your work, which is original. Okay. The second key expectation from a research, a PhD level research, is that a major part of the investigation you will do while you're pursuing this degree. तो आपका एक बड़ा काम जो है वो आपका रिसर्च है, और आपके राइटिंग में आपका रिसर्च ज्यादा आना चाहिए. That should be the major component of your writing, and of course it has to be clearly written and presented, right? And there's also a slight difference. These terms may be familiar, but sometimes the difference get lost. between a research proposal and a synopsis, right? बहुत लोग बोलेंगे कि रिसर्च प्रपोजल प्रेजेंटेशन है या साइनॉप्सिस प्रेजेंटेशन है, क्या इन शब्दों में भी थोड़ा डिफरेंस है टर्मिनोलॉजी के स्तर पे? So research proposal, is a plan that you're thinking of. It's likely what you're going to submit at the time of taking admission to a PhD program. जब आप किसी PhD प्रोग्राम के लिए अप्लाई करते हैं, चाहे इंडिया में चाहे कहीं बाहर, आपसे एक प्रपोजल एक्सपेक्ट किया जाता है, which is a plan of what research you want to do. Okay? जब आप एक PhD या रिसर्च प्रोग्राम में इनरोल कर लेते हैं, राइट, तो आपका तब तक your status as a research scholar is not confirmed till you're able to get that plan passed, right? So synopsis is it's a research proposal but with a more clear plan. जैसे रिसर्च प्रपोजल में आपसे एक्सपेक्टेशन ये शायद ना हो कि आप अपने टूल्स भी प्रेजेंट करें, राइट? लेकिन synopsis में we expect that you will have a more clearer idea of what tools you're going to use, whether you've identified your data sources, what your more specific plan of action would be. In methodology, I can say that I would want to use a case study approach. For a synopsis, of course, in the case study, right, what I've identified to be my cases, what my data sources will be to be able to do that case study. So of course, synopsis in that sense, it's not that tentative, right? तो जो आप proposal PhD program के entry के लिए submit करते हैं, is largely a proposed plan, right? Whereas synopsis is a little, one expects you to submit a synopsis after you've been assigned a supervisor, you have finished your coursework. So one expects कि research proposal से synopsis तक पहुंचने में, right, जो courses आपने, मान लीजिए आपने PhD program में admission के लिए एक proposal submit किया था. So at synopsis stage, of course our expectation is that it's not the same proposal. जो courses इस बीच में आपने किए हैं, चाहे वो मेथोडोलॉजी के कोर्सेस हो या कोई और इलेक्टिव आपके ऑप्शंस हो, जो आपका सुपरवाइजर के साथ इंटरेक्शन रहा है, अगर आपका कुछ रिसर्च कमिटी, एडवाइजरी कमिटी कुछ फॉर्म हुआ है, उसके साथ आपके कुछ जो इंटरेक्शंस रहे होंगे, राइट, that would have also gone on to inform your synopsis, right? So it's a more fleshed out, a more engaged work that one expects from a synopsis. So having made some of these distinctions clear, I hope we'll be in a better frame to understand what we need to do while preparing a research proposal vis-a-vis preparing a synopsis. Now, one thing which I would also want to share at this point is that whenever you're applying to a PhD program, right, it's absolutely important that you check the website of the institute. You're able to see who all are the faculty, who will be in who are there in that institute, one of whom may be your supervisors. See what areas they are working in. See whether the areas that they are working in, right, is close to what your area of interest is. क्योंकि PhD, master's level dissertation में, क्योंकि ज़्यादा emphasis आपके skill पे होता है कि आप research करना सीखें. It is still possible that somebody who has some idea of your area but may not necessarily be somebody with years of research in it will still be able to give you an overall mentorship, right? But for a PhD level research in which you're going to invest 4 to 5 years of your life, it's important that there is a topic supervisor match, right? It's also important, that you are able to see, whether there are more than one people who might be able to supervise your research in that particular institution. क्योंकि इंडिया में, research admissions work slightly different from many places in the West, jahan pe, different supervisors will have some vacancies. So you directly have to first confirm with the supervisor, and only when somebody, shares their confirmation to work with you, do you apply to the university, right? Whereas in India, in many universities, you first apply and then supervisors are allotted. So इस चीज को स्टडी करना, जानना बहुत जरूरी है. कहीं ऐसा ना हो कि आप अच्छा प्रपोजल प्रिपेयर करें, it's a good work, क्योंकि in India the entry is not just based on the proposal. आप written exam देंगे, आप interviews देंगे. So it's important for you to see that there are some people whom you've been able to identify in the institute to which you're applying to, who have some match with your area. Okay. Now coming to the important part. One, when you're applying to a PhD program, you'll find that the guidelines for the entrance are usually conveyed, they are posted on the website of an institution. उसमें बहुत बार आपसे expected word limit क्या है वो बहुत साफ साफ दिया होगा, right? Entry level पे बहुत बार word limit is quite strict in the sense, और बहुत कम होती है. It may just be around, say 2000 words at most, 1500 to 3000 words. So please see that very carefully. अगर आपका research proposal, imagine there'll be 100 students applying, right? And if the research proposal carries mark, you'll have 10 faculty who would be reading over 100 research proposals. So at that time, if your research proposal is just unnecessarily long, बहुत repetitive हो रहा है, इधर उधर का, it's not very specific, right? Then it's not very likely to get noted, right? So see if there is a guideline given, if there is a word limit given, and to the extent possible, try to stay close to it. Okay, that's one thing. Second, now coming to the structure. Now this is, one structure, but if you check, if you just go on the internet and you type structure for research proposals, structure for synopsis, you will find that there are considerable similarities across structure also, right? थोड़ा difference ये होगा कि कई research questions आप शुरू में डालते हैं, review of literature के बाद में डालते हैं. So there would be some minor differences, but largely this is what you will have to work around. First is to have a proposed title for your research. Okay. और अब जो पार्ट में बोलूंगी वो सिनॉप्सिस के लिए भी एप्लीकेबल है और रिसर्च प्रपोजल के लिए भी एप्लीकेबल है. जहां पे दोनों में थोड़ा फर्क होगा, that I will of course try and clarify. But one thing, of course, that synopsis is expected to be longer than a research proposal. Again, not very long. Ideally should not be more than 20 pages. But of course, research proposals are supposed to be shorter, way shorter than your synopsis. So the structure is, there needs to be a proposed title for the research, एक rationale या statement of purpose, कि आप ये research क्यों करना चाहते हैं, right? So some reason for how you came to this topic. It could, in a research proposal, it need not be a paragraph, because अगर आप 200-300 word का rationale पे लिख देंगे, you've got very, very few words remaining to write the rest of the stuff, right? So I'm also talking in terms of pragmatics, because these are important, right? And for you to be able to use your time better, a proposed title, a very clear statement of a broad aim. Right? This aim is different from research questions. That I will look at teacher-student negotiation in a classroom during the time of pandemic. I will look at two particular challenges that were negotiated during the time of pandemic. Could be my research questions or objectives. My larger aim is around understanding classroom processes during the time of the pandemic. So proposed title, one or two lines that are able to convey why you want to do this and what's your larger concern. Okay. Then we move to introduction of key concepts or contextualization of the study, which is, जब आप एक study में कुछ terms use करते हैं, it could be, experience, it could be role of online, it could be, it may happen that my examples come largely from education or psychology because of my familiarity with these disciplines. लेकिन आप जिस भी social science discipline में काम कर रहे हैं, अगर मैं learning की बात कर रही हूँ, या I'm talking about how play affects social emotional development of children. So the key terms that are being used in my research, right, need to be contextualized. आप वो terms किस तरीके से use कर रहे हो, right? So, if I'm a psychologist, the way I would talk about, say, state of anxiety or say depression or mental health may differ slightly from a commonsensical use of it, right? Or if I'm using the word curriculum, if I'm using the word gender, if I'm using the word, prejudice, इन सारे terms के बहुत सारे meanings commonsensically exist करते हैं, right? As a researcher, you need to be able to, say that of these definitions or of these perspectives, this is how you are looking at this term, and of course, where is it coming from, right? So citations, please note, are very, very important part of your research. So introduction of key concepts and context would be to give a kind of a background of the research, something that will show your familiarity with that area and will bring out, how you're going to use particular terms. Okay. After that, we engage with review of literature. You look at literature in the existing field. Now, here I just want to, emphasize that the part on review of literature, how you come to a research topic and research questions is a process by itself. Research proposal को लिखने से उसका शुरुआत नहीं होता है, मतलब लिखने से इन द सेंस कि प्रपोजल लिखने से नहीं होता है. उससे पहले आप कॉन्सेप्ट मैप्स बनाएंगे, आप मेमो राइटिंग करेंगे, you will have certain drafts and note making that will precede the process. That will precede the formulation of research topic, right? एक एरिया आइडेंटिफाई करना कि मैं जेंडर और इंक्लूजन पे काम करना चाहती हूँ, या मैं लर्निंग इन द टाइम्स ऑफ पैंडेमिक में काम करना चाहती हूँ, ये एक ब्रॉडर एरिया है. लेकिन जेंडर एंड इंक्लूजन में मैं क्या काम करना चाहती हूँ? What about gender? What aspect of inclusion, right? So coming from your area of interest to a more specific focused research topic is also a process. There is a YouTube channel that I have tried to put together, which is, let me just share it with you briefly. Just one second. Right. Okay. So if you are able to see this, there's this YouTube channel, Basics of Academic and Research Writing. And of course, there's a Facebook page, Basics of Academic Research and Writing. In this, what I would suggest is that there are a few videos that are already there. So I'm not going to go into greater depth in them. When I share the recording of this on the YouTube, I'll attach the relevant links also. But I would encourage you to go through them to know how one develops research topic, how does one come to a research topic and research questions. So those videos are One is this video titled From Research Interest to Research Topics. This is largely a video that I have put together reflecting on my own journey of moving from an area of interest to more specific research topic and research questions. So this is one video. This is a very, very useful video on literature review by Dr. Swasti Ranjan as to, how do you need to do literature review? What does it entail? What are the different aspects of it? It's a very, very detailed video regarding, how to go about literature review. So please do go through it. It will, what are the different phases of literature review, and for the present, for the developing of proposal, what is the part of review that goes at that point of time? What is theoretical literature? What is research literature? So that's another video that would be useful for you as you work on your research proposal plans. And finally, there is a video on concept mapping in research. Concept mapping is a useful process, in how do we come to our specific research questions, right? So these are 3 videos which are there on this page on basics of academic and research writing. So it would be great, if you could go through some of these videos. Thanks, Karan, for sharing this channel link. So coming back, to what I was sharing. So like I said, that even arriving at a research topic, or research questions is never the starting point of research. हमारे कुछ broad general ideas होते हैं. Those are important ideas, those are important questions, right? But they are not necessarily the research questions. तो जब आप research proposal लिखने के लिए बैठेंगे, right? पहले तो आपको ये चीज देखना पड़ेगा कि आप किस चीज पे रिसर्च करना चाहते हैं. आप एक एरिया आइडेंटिफाई करेंगे, फिर उस पर पढ़ना शुरू करेंगे कि उसमें किस किस तरीके का काम हुआ है, उसमें किस किस what is the theoretical understanding of certain concepts, and then see कि आपको किस चीज में इंटरेस्ट आ रहा है. और जब आप अपना एरिया आइडेंटिफाई करके उस पर पढ़ना शुरू करते हैं, that is when concept maps become very helpful, right? This is the time when it helps to have concept maps, क्योंकि वो आपको that they will help you decide how to trace different relationships between different concepts. कौन से concepts explore हो चुके हैं, कौन से concepts अभी तक explore नहीं हुए हैं. So this might just be a little bit of repetition, but let me just share this diagram. Right. So for example, अगर मैं exclusion और marginalization मेरा interest है, then what about exclusion and marginalization? Where do I want to study exclusion and marginalization? तो मैंने identify कर लिया कि मुझे largely exclusion in education पे काम करना है. So I write these 2 concepts. As I start reading more about it, I will need to decide कि मैं education को कहाँ पे देखना चाहती हूँ, किस लेवल में, प्री स्कूल में, स्कूल में, यूनिवर्सिटी, ओवरऑल, मैं कौन सा टाइप, प्राइवेट, पब्लिक, एट विच साइट, मतलब एजुकेशन में करिकुलम, टेक्स्ट बुक्स, क्लासरूम्स, टीचर एजुकेशन, पॉलिसी, फिलॉसफी, व्हाट एस्पेक्ट ऑफ इट, एक्सक्लूजन में भी किसका एक्सक्लूजन, what part of exclusion, it could be access to physical space, it could be nature of participation. So as you read, you will make notes, you will do your memo writing, जो चीजें आपको समझ में आ रही हैं, और आपका concept map थोड़ा बढ़ता जाएगा, and then you will be able to see कि कहाँ पे आप साथ साथ में देखोगे कि इन terms पे और क्या research हुआ है, और उसमें आपको क्लियर होगा कि हाँ, ये रिसर्च यहाँ पे हुआ है, शायद हमारे कॉन्टेक्स्ट में नहीं हुआ है, या फिजिकल एक्सेस को एक तरीके से देखा गया है कि किस तरीके से इंक्लूजन हो रहा है, बट आफ्टर इंक्लूजन व्हाट हैपेंस may not have been studied, or a particular aspect of it. So you will try to figure out what relation do you exactly want to study, what is the gap in the existing literature, what might be contradictions in existing literature, which then makes your work a work that will contribute something new, right? तो अगर PhD research में जो आप कर रहे हैं वो पहले से हो चुका है, established है, उसमें आप कुछ नया नहीं ला रहे हैं, context के level पे या process के level पे, then of course the committee is going to send you back saying, you know, but इस पे तो बहुत काम हुआ है, right? So even if I'm doing, you know, if I want to study language and exclusion, I have to see what kind of work has been done. You know, if it already answers my questions, then do I just want to, you know, invest 4 years into repeating something that has already been done? Or what is it that newer nuance that, you know, I can try to find out, right? So this process of concept mapping is extremely important. This concept mapping cannot take place if you're not engaging with literature, right? जब हम literature term का प्रयोग करते हैं research के context में, हमारा मतलब है academic काम जो उस पे किया है, क्या theories उस पे हैं, क्या research उस पे किया गया है, you know, उससे related क्या कुछ policy या किसी भी तरीके के documents हैं, उन सबको carefully study करना, right? और जब आप ये काम करेंगे, आप अपना कॉन्सेप्ट मैपिंग करेंगे, आप अपने मेमोज बनाते रहेंगे, उसी प्रोसेस में आपका प्रपोजल भी डेवलप होगा. यू नो, बहुत बार इस तरीके से भी लोग करते हैं कि पहले डिसाइड कर लिया कि यू नो ये मेरा टॉपिक है, ये मेरे रिसर्च क्वेश्चंस हैं, फिर उसके बाद यू नो दे ट्राई टू फिट कि कहाँ पे अब यू नो अच्छा हम जेंडर पे काम कर रहे हैं, ये आपने रिसर्च क्वेश्चन बना लिया है, अब जेंडर पे 3 लिटरेचर स्टडीज ढूंढ लिए और उसको आपने उसको क्रोनोलॉजिकली उसका बस एब्स्ट्रैक्ट लिख दिया, वो रिव्यू ऑफ लिटरेचर नहीं है, राइट? व्हेन यू राइट review of literature for the purpose of proposal, you have to write some of the major works that have informed your understanding. So suppose I'm working on language and learning and exclusion. In my introduction, I will write about, you know, where does my understanding of inclusion come from? Why do I want to research on language and learning? What theory helps me understand the relationship between language and learning? And then I will review some important works to see that this work has been done. In light of this work, I want to observe this practice. तो आपके research questions जो हैं, वो आपके review of literature में से निकलने चाहिए. आपके research questions जो literature review में कुछ gap आ रहा है, कुछ inconsistencies हैं, कुछ contradictions हैं, कोई tensions हैं, वहां से निकल के आना चाहिए. So you'll have a proposed title, a very brief statement of purpose, why you're doing it and the broader concern. Then your introduction, which gives the background of your study, the context, and some of the key terms that you'll be using. Then a review of literature, जो major काम आपने पढ़े हैं. See, जब आप synopsis में या अपने actual research में review of literature लिखेंगे, तब आपसे expectation होगा कि आप कोई जो भी काम ले रहे हैं उसको डिस्क्राइब करें और मतलब उस पे एक फोकस 2-3 पैराग्राफ्स लिखें टू ब्रिंग आउट यू नो व्हाट इज दिस वर्क अबाउट, इसके की आर्ग्यूमेंट्स क्या हैं, एंड देन हाउ डू यू थिंक अबाउट इट्स की आर्ग्यूमेंट्स, राइट? लेकिन जब आप प्रपोजल के लिए जिसमें ऑलरेडी 1500 या 2500 वर्ड्स का एक लिमिट है, there it may help you to say, you know, कि आपने लिखा है कि a large part of, you know, a number of researches about representation of women in textbooks have been done. Bracket में you can cite the authors whose work you have read and just bring out the key arguments. तो आपको हर एक काम को डिटेल में डिस्क्राइब करने की, समराइज करने की जरूरत नहीं है. But that paragraph should be able to bring out, you know, theoretical work that you've read, research you have read. You have to give citations and the key arguments which are emerging. उसके बाद आप वहां से research questions पे आएंगे, right? when we come to, I hope, is there any doubt or any question that you would like to ask till here? If there are any concerns, any questions till here. Okay, right, so fine. Moving on, so when we come to research questions, like I said, you'll have to refer to some of those early videos कि आप concept map or review of literature से कैसे research questions तक आते हैं. But once you start formulating your research questions, and there's this book by Joseph Maxwell, which I've always found very, very useful in thinking about research questions. And this book is called, let me just share the name of the book, Qualitative Research Design, right? It's a useful book to think about research questions. So what, some of the important aspects of research questions are that one, they should be able to provide a focus to your research, right? Focus provide करने के लिए जरूरी है कि वो बहुत general ना हो और एकदम इतना भी specific ना हो कि आपके लिए explore करने को कुछ रहे ना, right? So it's important that research questions are okay, Aishwarya, I'll just come back to your question. Huh? I just saw it now. I'll come back to your question. So research question, see, one is कि research question जब हम पूछते हैं, any question can be a question of interest. Any question can be a question of research interest. However, it does not make it a research question. How does inclusion happen is an interesting question that I may want to pursue as an educational researcher. लेकिन ये एक broad question है, inclusion कैसे होता है, मुझे ये देखना है कि जब मैं कोई सवाल पूछती हूँ, the question in itself should suggest a method to me, right? अगर मैं पूछूं कि inclusion कैसे होता है, अब बहुत सारी चीजें हैं, inclusion किस level पे, inclusion किसका, inclusion entry level पे, inclusion textbooks में, inclusion classroom processes में, आपको खाली ये बोलने से कि I want to study, how does inclusion happen, I'm not being able to visualize कि मेरा sample क्या होगा, मेरा field क्या होगा, मैं इंटरव्यू करूंगी या मैं ऑब्जर्वेशन करूंगी. तो आपका रिसर्च क्वेश्चन, इसका मतलब अभी ये रिसर्च क्वेश्चन फॉर्म में नहीं आया है, मुझे और थोड़ा कॉन्सेप्ट मैप बनाना होगा, लिटरेचर पढ़ना होगा, so that I'm able to come to a research question where, so when I say, how does, what is the role that textbooks play in inclusion of gender? Now I know that for this I will have to look at textbooks, right? मुझे textbook review करना पड़ेगा, I'll have to think of parameters, but this question helps me know कि मुझे करना क्या है, मुझे देखना क्या है. It may also help to say which textbooks, मैं EVS textbook की बात कर रही हूँ, science textbook की बात कर रही हूँ. So research question, needs to have a clear focus. It should be quote unquote researchable. अगर मेरा सवाल ये है कि इंसान जीता क्यों है, अच्छा सवाल है, फिलोसॉफिकल क्वेश्चन है, क्या मैं रिसर्च से उसका आंसर निकाल सकती हूँ? तो मुझे या तो उसको, उस सवाल को रिसर्च के सवाल तक लाना पड़ेगा. मैं क्या जान सकती हूँ इंसान क्यों जीता है? I'm not, at least right now I'm not being able to think of a systematic research method to find that out. Yes, what I can try and explore is why do people think they live? कि इंसान क्या सोचता है कि वो क्यों जीता है, ये सवाल मैं उनसे इंटरव्यूज करके पता लगा सकती हूँ. So I'm not saying that I'm researching why do people live. I'm researching on what are people's perspectives on why they live. Right? So is it just that is how the process of universe is. There is some spiritual meaning to it. So here I made the problem into a researchable problem. So that's very, very important कि आपका सवाल researchable हो, right? एक फोकस दे कि आप researchable है, लेकिन रिसर्च किसके साथ करेंगे, कैसे करेंगे, वो भी डायरेक्शन आपका रिसर्च क्वेश्चन आपको प्रोवाइड करना चाहिए. Then research question has to be apt for the methods that you're going to use. This is a theme, a concern that I've often discussed with students in research methods classes, that suppose if I'm talking about how do children play. Now, how do children play in itself should suggest the methodology to me, that if I have to see how do children play, I have to observe them play, right? Then my method cannot be interview, क्योंकि interview से मुझे उनका perception पता लगेगा वो कैसे खेल रहे हैं और उनके उसको articulate करने में भी फर्क हो सकता है, right? So I'll have to think that my research method should suggest a methodology to me, and the methodology that I write finally should be in some kind of it should have some link, some coherence with the research question. आपके research question में unverified assumptions नहीं होने चाहिए, right? So if my research question is, how did the negative impacts of online teaching shape students' learning achievement? Now this question supposes कि online learning के negative impact ही हुए हैं. अगर मैं अपने सवाल को इस तरीके से फ्रेम कर रही हूँ, तो फिर मुझे अपने रिव्यू ऑफ लिटरेचर में रिसर्च साइट करके पहले एस्टैब्लिश करना पड़ेगा कि ये अनवेरिफाइड क्लेम नहीं. अगर मैंने कहीं पे भी अपने रिव्यू ऑफ लिटरेचर में नेगेटिव इम्पैक्ट्स लार्जली आउटलाइन नहीं किए हैं, नहीं शेयर किए हैं, तो फिर ये मेरा assumption नहीं हो सकता है, right? Or why do people not like this? Why do people oppose participatory learning? Now, how do I know they oppose? Have I done a research to find that out? Has somebody else done a research to find that out? Is it a credible research? Is it a research that you can is of a kind that you can assume कि उस basis पे आप actually ये मान सकते हैं? Are there number of researchers that say that? So on the basis of that, you're concluding. So make sure your research questions do not have any untested, unverified assumptions. If I'm not sure, I may want to begin with how do people see this, and then go on to, why do they see it like this? So either that they see it like this, I'll have to establish through presentation of existing literature, or by perhaps making it one of the research questions. Otherwise, the point is, research has to be an honest, rigorous quest for finding something, right? अगर हमारे research question में ही untested assumptions चले गए हैं, then it's quite likely that they will color the findings that we will have. They will, put a blinder on us कि हम क्या फिर अपने research में देख रहे हैं, right? It has to be informed by context of research. It has to be informed by, epistemological, ontological perspectives. I'll have a session separately on what epistemology, ontology is. But largely, अभी अगर मैं उसको बहुत simple करके बताऊं, तो वो ये है कि मेरा subject of inquiry क्या है, ठीक है? अगर मेरा subject of inquiry है inclusion, right? What is my assumption about inclusion? कि inclusion क्या है? ये एक clearly stated fact है और वो वैसा ही है. There is something called inclusion which is definite, जिसका meaning बदलता नहीं है, वो universal है. तब मेरा जो method होगा inclusion को study करने का वो अलग होगा. Because I know there is a very definite thing called inclusion, सिर्फ इसी को इंक्लूजन कहते हैं और कुछ इंक्लूजन नहीं है, तो फिर मेरे पास कुछ पैरामीटर्स होंगे जो मैं स्कूल्स पे जाके आई विल सी वेदर द स्कूल इज मैचिंग दीज पैरामीटर्स और नॉट. If I think inclusion is something which gets its meaning from the context, then my approach will be different. I will try to understand what that community understands by inclusion, then how does it work, right? So आपके क्या assumption है कि आपका जो nature of inquiry है वो एक fact की तरह है, एक physical fact की तरह है, या जो nature of inquiry है वो contextual है, उस community के interactions में वो emerge होता है, will determine what methodological approach I will use. Right? A lot of time it happens कि जो research questions कोई बोलता है कि हम qualitative research कर रहे हैं using interviews, and the research question is worded as what is the impact of this on this. Now impact suggests a very cause and effect relationship. Cause and effect relationship को आप एक qualitative research that involves interviews में नहीं establish कर सकते हो, right? So of course, to prepare a research proposal, you need to have an understanding of methodologies, which is the next part of it, right? Because as we've seen that there is a proposed title, there is a rationale, a statement of purpose, introduction or background, review of literature, research questions, and then a methodology that is appropriate to research questions, right? तो आप quantitative research कर रहे हैं तो आपका methodology उस तरीके का होगा और आपके research questions भी फिर उस तरीके के होंगे. आप qualitative research कर रहे हो, that will reflect in your research questions and also reflect in your methodology. Your methodology has to be appropriate to your research questions. If your research questions are about exploring perceptions of people, beliefs of people, opinions of people, understanding of opinions of people, then interviews, interactions will be your major source of data, right? For something else, documentation may be, observing and documenting may be a more apt source of data. आप case study करेंगे या ethnographic work करेंगे will depend on what kind of research questions you have, and you have to engage with different methodologies. The qualitative research के assumptions क्या है, quantitative research के assumptions और methods क्या है. एक होता है methodological approach कि आप case study करेंगे, आप ethnographic research करेंगे, आप action research करेंगे, और फिर होते हैं methods, right? So there is a difference between methodological approach or methodology and methods. Methodology is my larger framework, right? Also, if I'm following a case study approach, that's my methodology. उस case study में मेरे methods of data collection क्या होंगे? So if I'm suppose trying to understand a working or some reform in an institution, then my methods of data collection can be interview with the people who are in charge of making those policies, implementing those policies. It may be minutes of the meetings in which policies are drafted, other policy documents. It may include, my observations if I can get access to be present as an observer in some of these meetings, right? So then these are my data sources, right? So in methodology section, you have to clearly identify आपका sample क्या होगा, आपका field या sample या field क्या होगा, आपके data sources क्या होंगे, right? And they have to be in alignment with your research questions and your larger aim of the study. So methodology, methodological framework, आपका sample या field जो आपने identify किया है, आपके data sources क्या होंगे, methods of data collection क्या होंगे, and method of analysis क्या होगा, right? And again, method of analysis has to be in keeping with your methods of data collection. Right? So methodology में these are the things कि आपका larger approach क्या है, आपने क्या sample या data sources या field identify की है, वो identify करने के बाद आप data किस form में collect करेंगे और उसको फिर analyze कैसे करेंगे. So it can just be a paragraph but which mentions all of these points, right? And of course, if it is a synopsis, the synopsis will differ from proposal largely in the engagement with review of literature and methodology. Proposal may, like I said, given the word limit, maybe you will be able to devote 2 or 3 paragraphs to review of literature in 1,500 words, maybe around 400 to 500 words at the max. But in synopsis, of course, the expectation is that you're clearly able to present, synthesize the different literature that you've read. So review of literature section आपका synopsis में is expected to be more rigorous, more engaged, जिसमें सिर्फ आप उस काम का summary नहीं लिख रहे, right? You're also bringing out what you have picked up from that, how it informs this current study for you. And even in methodology, right? In research proposal, if you're able to write, I will use a case study approach, this will be my case, I will collect data in this form and use content or thematic analysis should be sufficient. In a synopsis, of course, one hopes that, you know, the methodology is more detailed out. You know, आप interviews लेंगे तो आप semi structured interviews लोगे, unstructured interviews लोगे, कितना time आप field पे spend करेंगे, observations किस form में होंगे, participant observation होगा, non-participant observation होगा, is there some pilot tool you know, that you have, that you've used or you want to try out, so that your methodology and review of literature are 2 sections which will be much more detailed in your synopsis, right? So क्योंकि synopsis pass करने के लिए the committee needs to know that okay, now you're prepared to go and collect data. You know, data को collect करने में, field पे जाने में, it's question of both rigor and ethics, and both of which are equally important. You know, अगर मैं prepared नहीं हूँ, मैंने पढ़ा नहीं है, I can also cause a lot of disturbance, tensions, violence on the field, you know, psychological violence on the field and participants. मैं prepared नहीं हूँ और मुझे नहीं पता है क्या पूछना है, तो मैं ऐसे questions पूछ रही हूँ जो उनको uncomfortable कर रहे हैं, disturb कर रहे हैं, or they are also impacting on how people will talk to me, right? What kind of data I can get. So at synopsis level, we expect a student to be far more prepared to start working on the research, which includes collecting data, right? So this is an important point that one needs to think about. Then a tentative research plan, right? कई बार प्रपोजल स्टेज में रिसर्च प्लान की जरूरत नहीं होती है. साइनॉप्सिस में एक रिसर्च प्लान, यू नो, आप कब तक अपने टूल्स कंप्लीट करोगे, आप कब फील्ड पे जाओगे, वापस आओगे, विल यू गो ट्वाइस, विल यू गो वंस, सो सम काइंड ऑफ अ टाइमलाइन and also a tentative chapterization is usually expected in synopsis, not at research proposal stage. And then bibliography or references. बिब्लियोग्राफी और रेफरेंसेस में भी एक फर्क है. बिब्लियोग्राफी में आप सिर्फ उन्हीं चीजों का रेफरेंस लिखते हैं जिनको आपने अपने प्रपोजल या साइनॉप्सिस में साइट किया है, राइट? अगर मैंने कुछ काम पढ़ा है लेकिन मैंने वो डायरेक्टली अपने राइटिंग में यूज नहीं किया है इन फॉर्म ऑफ डायरेक्ट कोट्स और पैराफ्रेजिंग, it just helped me build an understanding, but I have not used it, then I don't need to include it in bibliography, right? Bibliography is only a list of what you have cited, unke proper references. References mein you can include works you've cited and works you've been informed by, right? Usually for a PhD level thesis, it's largely bibliography which is expected, because references one hopes will, you know, may run into many pages, because you read a lot before, you know, I may have read a lot on gender theory before I come to realize that what I want to work on is sexuality, so I may not be using that so much, and so on, right? So this is the difference between bibliography and references. So this is largely, you know, the format that one can follow while, you know, preparing a research proposal or a synopsis. And just 1 second. Yeah, let me just. Right, so I hope you're able to see this, right? So this is also a sample that I've taken from web, where a sample proposal, again, a conceptual framework, एक introduction होगा, problem statement, प्रॉब्लम स्टेटमेंट पहले या बाद में आ सकता है. यहाँ पे ऑब्जेक्टिव्स पहले दिए हैं, लिटरेचर बाद में. I personally feel, but this again you can go by what your supervisor advises, या अगर यूनिवर्सिटी के गाइडलाइंस में एक फॉर्मेट दिया है then do follow that. I personally feel that research questions ideally should come after literature review. See, research questions are slightly broader. They are in a question form. Objectives are in statement form. तो कुछ रिसर्च में आप शायद देखेंगे कि रिसर्च क्वेश्चंस की जगह ऑब्जेक्टिव्स हैं, which is fine, right? So how did teachers and children negotiate technological challenges in online is a research question. To explore how they negotiated will be an objective, right? So depending on what the format is, you can choose either one of the two or have both. Then methodology, right? So isme you can just see that it's a very brief methodology which is written. This is a conceptual literature. Largely what I've referred to is also more empirical research. कई बहुत सारे research होंगे which are just based on review of existing literature. It's a more theoretical work. So of course उसका भी methodology होगा. See, if you're doing a research, even if what you're doing is a more conceptual work, right? There is some data you will bring. It's not a research of all that you're doing is saying this happened, this person said this person said this person said this. That is not a research. So even if you're doing conceptual work, the expectation is कि आप बहुत सारे काम देख के उनको synthesize करके maybe कुछ एक नया argument लाओगे, उनको analyze करोगे, उससे themes निकलेंगे कि काम इस तरीके के, इस ओरिएंटेशन के हो रहे हैं, इस पर्सपेक्टिव में हो रहे हैं, उसमें क्या मिस हो रहा है, right? So that will still have, you can do a text, a discourse analysis of a text. So which means you're looking at literature to see what kind of structures are informing that kind of a literature, right? So you can have a conceptual work, you can have an empirical work, empirical जिसमें आप field में जाके data collect कर रहे हैं. So yeah, largely this is the structure of a proposal: a title, a rationale and a statement, an introduction which gives background and explains some of the key terms, a review of literature. For a research proposal, it will need to be brief, but it will require you to do a lot of citations, right? So that the person knows that this is what you've read, and not just citations, but bring out an argument for that, right? So if I'm suppose doing if I'm writing a research proposal, say for understanding language challenges of students in higher education, I might say that, there's a number of literature that exists on exploring challenges of students due to language barriers in school, and I put a bracket and I write all the names, or as many works that I have read on school language and school and language challenges. Then write about what are the kind of challenges, if there is any work that has been done to explain the link between school and higher education, cite that, and then bring out what is missing. So I may have to just be able to write this in few lines, but I would expect that there are citations here. And please remember, जब आप proposal के लिए कुछ काम cite कर रहे हैं, आपने उनको पढ़ा होना चाहिए. This I'm speaking more, from an experience of interviewing students. कि अगर मान लीजिए आपने एक proposal लिखा है, right? और आप interview के लिए आ रहे हैं, and especially say if you're a JRF candidate जिसका written भी नहीं हुआ है, or any candidate actually, that shouldn't matter. See, one thing that as an examiner, I or anybody else would want to ascertain would be कि ये proposal आपने लिखा है, right? जब आप synopsis में एक proposal पास कराते हो, आप अपने supervisor, आप research advisory committee के साथ मिलके काम करते हैं. They've seen your progress and they know that it's your work. But suppose I don't know you, you're coming to me as a candidate for admission and you're sharing a proposal with me. how do I know that you have written this proposal? Because it happens a lot कि हम जैसे ही candidates से उनके proposal के बारे में बात करना शुरू करते हैं, कुछ concepts को थोड़ा define करने को बोलते हैं, you realize that the proposal is not written by them because they are not able to either explain the terms that they have written या कुछ काम जो उन्होंने cite किया है अपने literature review में, right? क्योंकि proposal है वो बहुत briefly cite किया होगा. But when we mention, can you elaborate this work, you find that they have not read that work, right? So if when you're preparing a research proposal for an entrance, please note that your research proposal, of course, some institutes will grade it and some will use it for conducting the interview. But the interview then largely may be around the research proposal, and it will be about how well have you engaged with your own proposal. Okay, so let me just go to a few questions here. Aishwarya, there are a few universities asking for a research project. Research project for what? Like for PhD admissions?
Yes, ma'am. So basically international universities ask for them.
Yeah, see, that is if you're already involved with research projects for a postdoctoral, they may want you to come with a grant. So that's a different thing altogether, right? Research project would be one in which, you also have a timeline, a budget, a proposal for research project, right? So that's a completely different thing. That and in some universities, when you come for a postdoctoral research or something, they would expect you to have an idea of project in mind. If you're working with a research organization, then an important component of proposal is also budgeting. Whether you will need research assistance, you will need cost for stationery, or if you need certain softwares for analysis and so on, and whether you'll be bringing in grants, or you will need to apply for grants, or have you identified some funders. So all that will go in a research project proposal. A project proposal should also include a budget. And it will be slightly different in forms of with research projects, some organizations will expect that there are some deliverable or outcomes that are identified, some applications or the scope that is clearly identified. So there would be some difference in how a research project proposal is written, right? Whether a lot of times includes collaborators. Will you be working with some other institution? Are you the principal investigator, or will there be somebody else working with you? Right. So there will be some elements which are common, but there is certain other things that will also one would need in a research project. Some will look for a team of advisors, or people whom you'll be consulting for academic inputs, for technical inputs, and so on. Mahima, you've written since there's a word.
Thank you, ma'am.
Sure, welcome, Aishwarya. Since there's a word limit to research proposal, how can we prevent repetition between writing background, conceptual note, and literature review? What to keep in mind while writing both and maintain the difference, right? So here, just a couple of rereadings would help, Mahima. So for instance, I completely get it, because I do struggle with it. In a lot of, if you see research journals, in many researches, review of literature is often combined with introduction. In fact, for my own PhD research, my introduction and review of literature chapters were together. I just called it at conceptualizing or situating the study, right? In that case, I think what can help is you have a title, you have a rationale and background of the study, which shows some familiarity, if there is some recent event, what has led you to this, and then come straight away to review of literature, where you begin with conceptual understandings, and then what research literature says. So that could be one way of avoiding, so you have introduction, you write title and write rationale and background of the study, and then come straight away to review of literature. So that would help avoid, a repetition.
Yes, because I have struggled, and it has repetitively emerged in my writing that मैं वो डिफरेंस क्रिएट नहीं कर पाती हूँ एंड काफी सारा मेजर पार्ट ऑफ माय लिटरेचर रिव्यू ends up in the background or the conceptual note.
No, completely understandable. I struggled with it and then I decided to put it as one, right? क्योंकि आपका theoretical literature को आप समझने के लिए भी use करते हो, and of course you also critically look at it, right? So that is absolutely fine कि आप title लिखिए, एक rational background and the larger, purpose statement of purpose,
contextualization,
and then come to review of literature.
And then we can merge the both things. Then
so then conceptual और वो दोनों आ जाएगा उसमें, conceptual part भी आ जाएगा, research part भी आ जाएगा.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Any other questions? I hope that this structure, I hope this was helpful in some way. That how to work towards it, but yeah, I can't emphasize it enough कि आप कम see जब भी लिखे ना एक these are just not very this is nothing to do with research skills. Keep your sentences short. Always always read what you have written, and it always helps, especially when you're applying for another university, it always helps to get a peer review done. A lot of times when I have an idea, because I have an idea, it looks very clear to me. But when I ask a friend to read it, I realize that it's not clear as I had imagined it to be. Right? So they might say कि जब हम कुछ सोचते हैं, हमारे अपने assumptions होते हैं, जो कई बार लिखते टाइम हम अपने assumptions को नहीं लिखते हैं, बस उनके basis पे जो समझ बनी है वो लिखते हैं. So when a friend reads it, right, they will be able to see, but why have you written this? Or a coherence is missing, right? So it always helps to at least reread what you have written once or twice, and also have a friend, a senior, read it once and give you a feedback. See, it's always helpful. These are certain things, like I said, whenever you're applying to a university, like I said, there is absolutely no excuse for not going through the website of that university. उसमें कौन-कौन faculty हैं, क्या-क्या courses उसके coursework में offer होते हैं, कुछ specializations list हैं, so that matching of the area, you will also get an idea of what the theoretical orientation is. And plus read the entrance guidelines very, very carefully. कि वो क्या expect कर रहे हैं. बहुत, the first time I wrote a research proposal was for my MPhil entrance, right? And in the brochure of the institution, it was very clearly written that they wanted these many words and they wanted these headings. उनको rational चाहिए, statement of purpose चाहिए था, review चाहिए था, objectives and methods चाहिए था. And of course, bibliography and reference is a must, whether asked or not. Because if you are writing a proposal informed by literature and you're not writing references or bibliography, then it's plagiarized work, right? So bibliography or references तो एक चीज है कि कोई पूछे ना पूछे आपको लिखना ही है. But a lot of universities, do give a brief structure of what titles or what headings they would definitely want you to write on. So do check for that and be absolutely familiar with what you have written, because this is the biggest dampener. When you're doing interview, you find a very good proposal, and this has happened, that one comes across a very amazing proposal and you look forward to interacting with that student, and the moment the interview begins, you realize that the person doesn't know their own proposal. They got it written by someone, so sometimes a slightly, I'm not saying have a weak proposal, but if there is slightly weaker proposal, but I know that a student has written it, they are engaged with it, they know what they have written, would any day have more chance than somebody who it's evident has not written it themselves, right? And of course, know the difference between research proposal and a synopsis. And for PhD research, because it's important that your work is contributing. There is something original in what you're trying to look at. You can't have a good research proposal if you're not reading, right? Then you'll end up, a lot of research proposals are very good in terms of structure, and also the person knows what they've written, but what they're saying is something on which a lot of work has been done. Again, this is just from experience. If you've not been able to identify a lot of review research, try to do it more. अगर आप एक यूनिवर्सिटी में अप्लाई कर रहे हैं और उसका एक तो यूनिवर्सिटीज ना आइडेंटिफाई करके रखिए कि आपका जो इंटरेस्ट है वो किस यूनिवर्सिटी के उससे मैच करता है, and then start looking at their website at regular intervals to know when admissions may be due, and start working on your research proposal, not after you've cleared something, क्योंकि आपका एक research proposal आप multiple university के entrances में use कर सकते हैं, right? So your thinking about proposal can't begin from the time of you've ठीक है written हो गया, आप कुछ proposal के लिए लिखते हैं, right? Because some of the proposals are well written and structured, but they are about things that everybody knows. I want to understand how, जैसे टेक्स्ट बुक में women का representation, इस पर बहुत काम हो चुका है, and you have to give yourself, see, literature review takes time. It takes time to search for research. सब कुछ ऑनलाइन नहीं मिलेगा, आपको लाइब्रेरीज विजिट करनी पड़ेंगी. Give yourself time to be able to do that, because again, another thing that does put off a committee is when people say, पर इस पे बहुत काम नहीं हुआ है. And sometimes, candidates sit for topics just in which a lot of work has been done. So, many rationale will be not much work has been done. And it could be something like, India में women के disciplinary choices में बहुत काम नहीं हुआ है. That was the last thing that I'd heard. A lot of work has been done on this. I mean, this is just an example, right? It's still better to say that you couldn't find much, you were not able to locate some of the researches, than to say that much work has not happened, right? Any other question? And just go through the videos that I said, because that will help you come at a research problem or a research question better. And that video on literature review might be helpful for all of you. And always, go to websites. See, you all are living in times where, for all the challenges and whatever with internet, a lot of resources are a keypad touch away. So try to look for good examples of a proposal. आपको बहुत सारे indiathesis.net, शोध गंगा में आपको research PhD के thesis मिल जाएंगे. See the structure of it. So you will find a lot of resources on net which have structures of how proposals should be written. So feel free to use them. I mean, feel free to use the structure, not the content, right? And you can always compare contents across, so when you're applying to US, then I may want to check out on internet, the proposal formats which are more apt for that place than here, for instance, right? So, yeah. So I don't see any more questions. So I'll stop the recording in that case, and I will share. Oh, sorry.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes,
I have a question.
Sure.
But this is not related to PhD proposal. I have a very different question. Like, I work in a social sector, development sector. तो बहुत सारे NGOs रिसर्च करते हैं. लाइक मेरी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन एक रिसर्च कर रही है जो पटना में रहने वाले स्लम डोलर्स के इकोनॉमिक बिहेवियर को समझना चाह रही, एंड दे आर पर्पस ऑफ डूइंग रिसर्च इज कि हम इस पे आगे जाके कलेक्टिवाइजेशन वर्क करेंगे और ये करेंगे।
Right.
और बहुत सारी एनजीओज हैं जो रिसर्च करती रहती हैं, लेकिन उनका जो स्ट्रक्चर होता है, उनकी रिपोर्ट का जो स्ट्रक्चर होता है वो एकेडमिक नहीं होता है। लाइक कि उसमें सिर्फ रिपोर्ट होती है, उसमें लिटरेचर रिव्यू नहीं होता है, उसमें मेथोडोलॉजी पे बहुत ज्यादा बात नहीं होती है, वो सिर्फ एनालिसिस होती है। वो रिपोर्ट बताते हैं और इन्फ्रेंसेस बताते हैं। तो क्या उस तरह की रिसर्चेस को भी हम लोग रिसर्च मानेंगे या उसे किस कैटेगरी में रखेंगे उस तरह के काम को?
रिसर्च ही है, राइट? रिसर्च से आप थीसिस लिखते हैं या प्रोजेक्ट रिपोर्ट लिखते हैं, फर्क उसमें है, राइट? अगर आप एक ऑब्जेक्टिव, एक रिसर्च क्वेश्चन से शुरू करके आपका एक मेथोडोलॉजी है, आप सिस्टमैटिकली उसको इन्वेस्टिगेट कर रहे हैं, आपने टूल्स बनाए हैं, वो टूल्स मेथोडोलॉजी के नॉलेज से, थ्योरी के नॉलेज से गाइडेड हैं, और फिर आपके कुछ रिजल्ट्स आए। अब ये आपके कॉन्टेक्स्ट पे, सेटिंग पे डिपेंड करता है कि व्हाट यू नो व्हाई इज दैट रिसर्च बीइंग डन, राइट? Purpose could be, for application purpose, for contributing to knowledge, for discovering something new. So whether you then write it in form of a project report or a thesis are the requirements of the places. But of course, as long as, you've done a systematic investigation, which is not, biased in the sense कि आपने ऐसा नहीं था कि एक unclaim, मतलब even for example qualitative research में हम ज्यादा तक hypothesis नहीं state करते हैं। कई बार आप एक मतलब state कर भी सकते हैं, but the purpose is that जब आप किसी research में अगर आप hypothesis लिखते हैं, even in qualitative research for that matter or quantitative, my concern if I were a reviewer, I would want to see what is the basis of your hypothesis, right? Is your hypothesis supported by existing review of literature? So if there is a certain rigor, a certain systematic approach that has been followed, it is a research, right? Of course, depending on the setting, you will have to take a call as to how do you write the report about it, what will be the main purpose of writing the report. Will it be to bring out the nuances and how it's contributing to some existing knowledge, or how does it help inform an implementation of a plan? So of course, both are absolutely researches.
Can we cite those work in our CV?
See, that completely depends, Furqan. I mean, that depends on what your... See, आप cite करना एक चीज है, मतलब cite तो आप कोई भी research कर सकते हैं. Claim करने में you will have to, of course, claim it in the capacity of the role you are playing. You will have to write whether आपने इस research में काम किया है, लेकिन ये आपको फिर शायद शायद नहीं, ये आपको clearly mention करना पड़ेगा कि इस project में मैंने काम as a principal investigator किया है, as a research assistant किया है, as a field researcher किया है, मेरा काम analysis में था. Right. So, for example, I have worked in a research organization prior to, finishing my PhD. So there, I write that I worked in a research organization and I was part of these researches. But then I clearly write what my role in those researches was. If my role was to develop tools, then I say that I was part of this research that was carried out by this organization, by these investigators, and my role was of tool development, or my role was of collecting data from the field, or my work was to do qualitative analysis of the data, or my work was to write a final report, or my work could include a combination of these, where I was involved in the process of tool development, collecting data, and doing qualitative analysis. So then that I will have to be honest and clearly shared, so I will not say that that was my research idea, मैं उसकी principal investigator या मैं उसकी first author नहीं हूँ. जो मेरा role उस research में है, of course that I will write as it is.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Right? So that of course is possible कि और of course जब उस research का जो भी report है उसमें मेरा नाम जिस ऑर्डर में आएगा मैं वैसे ही लिखूंगी, राइट? सो अगर प्रिंसिपल इन्वेस्टिगेटर्स कोई और थे and my name comes third, then it will be third. So that you just have to see what your role is, and that is it is something that can be backed by a certificate, right? So if I've written that I worked in this organization in these capacities, in these work, then I also have a experience certificate issued to me by that organization that also validates my claims by saying, yes, these were the tasks in the research that I was involved in. Right? So as long as your claim is authentic, it's honest, and it's backed by a certificate, you can put that in your CV. Any other questions? Okay, I'll also need to end